Okay. We are live. We are live.
Hello, YouTube.
Yeah, I think we're live. Yeah, we're live. Alright.
All right.
Let's say hello, everyone. Hello. This is Flooded Cinema episode 19. I'm joined today by Gigabillionaire Grindset, also known as
Money.
anarchopalamism, or cool guy, or lots of other aliases. You're the man of many names.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a bit of a break for the October season. We organized this last week, and then we kept sort of not being able to do it for whatever reason, and so we're getting the episode done today. And it's a good episode, very ace episode, and it sort of just started as a joke, I think, because I called something Ace Attorney instead of Ace Ventura. I got them mixed up, and then I can't remember if it was you I was talking to, but anyway, Ace Ventura and Ace Attorney today.
It's kind of a funny story to begin with. How it got delayed so long,
Yeah.
with trying to get a source for the movies, and then we wound up not being able to really get a good piracy source for
Yeah.
Ace Attorney.
Yeah, it's too
Like,
obscure.
yeah, and I even wrote down like all the problems that we had with the pirating, like not all the problems, like the problems with downloading, but also stuff like the Russian pirating website had one with no English subtitles. In the Japanese dub, there is a Russian sub paired with the Russian dub of the movie, and then the only version with English subtitles had Russian being dubbed over the original Japanese, with the
uh,
Japanese voices still clearly heard, and the Russian voices drowned out all the music and noise in the movie.
so what version did you end up watching?
So I wound up just buying the $12 version on YouTube
Oh,
because I got sick of it,
damn.
and I make bank. I am the gigabillionaire after all.
Oh, true. I guess it doesn't mean anything to you.
True. Be a
Um,
billionaire, still pirate movies.
yeah. Well, that's because pirating is the moral thing to do.
So true.
Um, but we'll start.
Including we were taking money away from Japanese sweatshops.
Yeah. Um, let me just quickly shill this. Okay. Live. Great. Okay. Ace Ventura. We'll start there. Um, got some people in the chat. Lake, hello. Salvific Deputy, hello. Catacomb, hello. Zuma, hello. Hello, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Ace Ventura. So, this is sort of one. I think it's one of the earliest Jim Carrey films. Really, it's sort of one of his breakout solo things after he had his TV success on. Was he on SNL? He was on like the Canadian equivalent of that or something. I don't really know.
I, I know he was sort of friends with Norm Macdonald, so that makes sense.
Okay. Um.
I think I saw an interview where they were sort of talking about some of the skits that they did back then.
hmm.
Not necessarily together.
So I think this was his like first big '90s movie. Yes, it is because he did The Mask after this, and then he eventually did I think like Dumb and Dumber is my choice for Jim Carrey film personally. Um, Ace Ventura I always considered one of his weaker outings, I would say, and he's a bit of an acquired taste. He was very '90s of the time, sort of his performance and his sense of humor.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I'm sort of like a on the cusp of Zoomer and millennial. So for me, I don't know. Maybe I can appreciate Jim Carrey a little bit more. But you were saying that it was just like too. I don't know. It didn't really suit your palette for humor.
Yeah, it felt like really nihilistic. Like the dude like steals a pet at the start of the show. Like he's throwing around glass in a box, like nothing matters, and then he gets the glass smashed out of his car, and he goes to this rich woman's house, returns her pet, and he's like, oh, it'd be nice to get paid for my smashed up car, and then no, like sexual favors is enough. It's like
Yeah.
nothing matters to him, and I know that that's the point. It just really rubs me the wrong way. This is actually, by the way, the first Jim Carrey movie. I've ever watched, and I went into it not knowing it was Jim Carrey. I
Oh,
went in thinking it was actually the actor's name Ace Ventura, and like I mixed that up with Jesse Ventura. I think it's Jesse Ventura,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the future governor of Minnesota. So I was thinking like, oh, this is a movie that the future governor of Minnesota made. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is the guy that Chris Kyle claimed he decked going into the movie.
So, I
This
don't
is the guy that sued Chris Kyle's widow.
know. um,
My mom had to correct me on it because I was talking about the movie with her.
yeah, it's Jim Carrey. Yeah, this isn't his. I think because like he hadn't been quite on the scene, so they didn't know how to use him yet perfectly, and his performance is very all over the place. Um,
Oh,
I think I find it interesting that I find with a lot of American mainstream movies, I find it interesting that at least at this point in time in the '90s, if you were gonna have a weirdo main character, they couldn't be like a loser. Like he is a loser, but like he's still like he's relatively charismatic and whatnot, and he can sort of talk to people, and he's not awkward or shy or anything like that. I just find that.
and he's like super competent in a way that a lot of these detective protagonists are, where he finds a rock and then just immediately knows, oh, this came from a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And that's something that sort of goes on throughout the movie, where he'll be weirdly competent in some ways, like in like breaking into the building and all that, and then just like you know what happens. I don't want to spoil too much of the movie.
yeah. Um, I will say that I liked the actual plot itself. Like I think, for what the movie is, like the actual sort of mystery. If you had have changed one or two of the elements, you could have made it, and changed the tone. Obviously, you could have made it like a moderately serious, '90s mystery detective type thing.
Yeah, like if you change the aspect of it it's about finding pets
Yeah,
to more of a spy setting, then it fits like a James Bond setting almost.
yeah, and I like um, I like the story and the sort of the twists, and the twist at the end is it's interesting. So this was 1990. What was I saying? 1994, I believe. So
Yeah.
what's that movie again? Silence of the Lambs was 1990, I think, or like 91. So it was like sort of in the consciousness, that whole transsexual, yeah, 91
Yeah.
transsexual type thing. So you could see it was kind of aping off that. The twist at the end is sort of what I thought, at least.
Does that it's also sort of in that time period where serial killers and kidnappers and all this was definitely in the public mind around the
Yeah,
time when people like what's his name, Ted Bundy, obviously a bit older than this, a 70s guy, but he's a little bit more he's still in the mind of people. You've got,
yeah,
who's that dude that ate people, uh you know
uh,
all these weird American serial killers that came out
yeah,
of the military at the time,
yeah,
and it's really only something that exists in the American
yeah.
conscience too. And over in Europe, they don't have that. Like they
No,
find that absolutely fascinating about America.
yeah,
The only
yeah.
serial killers they have over there actually came from American bases.
Mm,
Aside from like obvious examples like Jack the Ripper, who was probably, won't get too far into the occult background behind him because that's
yeah.
not very YouTube friendly.
Yeah, that is interesting. So this is like the sweet spot, of the '90s before. Um, it's like after all the villains were Russian, but before all like it's always like school shooters or like
Before the
Mus-
Big 11.
yeah, or Muslims basically
Yeah.
are the villains. And I was thinking about this the other day. It is like a very interesting period of time in pop culture, and it is like very nihilistic. Or it's a period of time where there's a more open exploration or more honest exploration of nihilism and meaninglessness. Like, and I think modern movies and certainly movies post the Big 11 or 9/11, whatever. They're nihilistic as well, but they sort of hide it under this, there's these sort of more fake themes of this veneer of things. So I think that's one thing I like about 90s movies. Yeah, they have this irreverentness to them that I appreciate at least.
And you sort of see a little bit of that in The Matrix too. It's like they literally. I think The Matrix is an early 2000s movie, but they set it in the 90s as like the peak of human civilization.
Mm.
I need to look up when The Matrix is. It's probably wrong.
I believe it's 99. It's either 99
Yeah,
or 2.
99.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's like literally right before the Big 11.
Yeah, and also American Psycho was 99. Yeah, no, American Psycho was 2000. So you get a lot of these sort of movies in that period of time. It is interesting.
Sort of shows Americans really were ready for a change at that time. Like they were ready to move it. They were ready for the 90s to come to an end in a new era. Maybe about the same feeling that we have about the world right now.
Yeah. Well, let's hope the next chapter is better.
Yeah.
But pretty much, we haven't really discussed the film because there isn't really much to say about this movie, honestly.
He does play an insanely disrespectful character very, very well. He's just sort of Chad and awkward enough at the same time to look like someone that would actually do it too.
Yeah. I think there's certain bits of the movie that I liked. So I liked the bit where they go to the fancy party. I thought that was really funny. He's just like disrespecting this like millionaire host guy because he doesn't have any respect for. He's a Sigma male basically, I guess. Like he just doesn't care. He does not care about like wealth or power or influence or anything like that. It's just sort of like he's got his. He's very much married to the job, I guess. Like he's just he wants to solve the mystery at any cost, and he's very dedicated to what he does. Like he's a pet detective. I suppose we should say the plot is the mascot of the Miami Dolphins, which is a dolphin called Snowflake, goes missing, and basically the police are looking for Snowflake, but then also the football team, they also happen to hire Ace Ventura to look for him as like a secondary investigation, and that's pretty much what the plot revolves around. It's working out, okay, who has beef with the Miami Dolphins? Is it like some sort of exotic pet trader, or is it an animal rights group or something like that? But it turns out it's there's this more sinister thing going on.
It turns out it's a cute Greek woman, and that really should have like clued anyone in because cute Greek women don't exist.
Oh, that's not very nice.
Yeah. I just realized like there's no way I can actually there's no way I can tell anyone in real life that I've been on this podcast now, because like my Twitter account and everything is doxed on here, and at the same time I'm like insulting Greek women, and I almost made a joke about Romanian women too.
Well, yeah, we keep it relatively optical here. I'll say that much. We try our best.
Yeah, it's okay because they're all white.
True. What I wanted to talk about was I think I liked the direction, and like a lot of the cinematography is actually pretty decent for especially if you compare it to modern comedies and stuff like that, where there's zero effort put in to the plot or like how it's actually made or anything like that, and it's just these really horrible improv scenes. And there's a lot of improv in this, obviously, because it's Jim Carrey just sort of goofing off a lot of the time, but it sort of works with his character, I think. That's one thing I find frustrating about modern comedies is you'll have these improv scenes where people, they don't act like their character, and they're just saying goofy stuff or whatever, but it doesn't really fit with the rest of the film. Whereas this movie works because everyone is pretty much normal or like just a standard person, except for ace, and he's sort of this weirdo guy, pretty much.
He's really the only guy that's actually like quipping in the movie too, and that
Yeah,
really helps his character to stand out. Whereas in modern movies, like everyone is just quipping all the time, like the whole movie
yeah,
is set up around being
yeah,
a comedic act.
yeah,
And with most modern movies, like I didn't like this movie, but at the same time, it sort of kept me like vaguely grinning for most of the time.
yeah,
Whereas modern comedy movies or movies that try to include comedy just have me rolling my eyes for the most part.
yeah,
And a lot of people find them funny. I don't understand where people got the idea that just referencing something is funny.
yeah. Um, I like,
That's what a lot of modern comedy movies are, is just referencing other work.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. And there's I appreciate, yeah, there's the work in this. Um, I love Jim Carrey's outfits. Like he's just dripping in every single scene.
Yeah,
He's got these, yeah, the Hawaiian shirt. He just, it's such a good look. I really like, yeah. Um, I like
he
that.
looks like the king of goodwill in every scene.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Another interesting thing is this movie features Tone Loc, the rapper. So that the black detective guy that was Tone Loc, he was like this '80s, early '90s popular rapper. He's not really that well popular now, but it's just interesting. Like that was another trend in the '90s was like there were no black actors pretty much. It was just all rappers were given roles as actors, which I thought
Yeah,
was interesting because um, that is an interesting phenomenon. Like I haven't really thought about it too much, but it's just sort of like if you compared it to say rock bands or whatever, people from rock bands don't become actors most, like it's not considered a normal thing, whereas a rapper just pivoting to be an actor is just so normalized.
hmm
I
and
don't know.
then you do have other black characters. I should say you have a black character in the '90s, and that's the '90s action movie and the '80s action movie as well, where they're all
Mm,
like the same sort of generically buff guy. They're sort
yeah.
of angry and very serious most of the time, and
Mm,
then they all have that same handlebar mustache.
yeah. Um, Except for Chris Tucker in like Rush Hour, and he's so good in those movies. I don't know if you've
I've never
seen them.
watched it.
Oh, well, anyway, Chris Tucker's good at them. I'm trying to think what else is there to say about this movie. Uh, I like the bit where they go to the mental institute and then he's pretending to be insane and he's wearing a tutu.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty funny.
that actually
Um,
made me almost burst out laughing a couple times.
so really, the movie is sort of it doesn't feel like a series of sketches like a lot of comedy movies do. Like the plot flows pretty naturally, um, and there's sort of different instances where Jim Carrey has to act, either pretend he's something or he's works out something. So for instance, there's that one scene where a character is falls out of a balcony and the police are there and they're trying to work out what's happened, and then he rocks up and he immediately works out what happened, and he sort of like he goes in this sort of spiel explaining why what he thought happened actually happened. And I like that scene. It's always nice to have these sort of scenes where characters outsmart other characters and things like that, and it makes sense as well why the cops are incompetent when you get to the end of the film.
Yeah, and it's really important to have scenes like that because oftentimes these movies will make out the protagonist to be the smartest guy in the room and then never actually show it.
Yeah,
Like this happens especially in serious literature today, where you'll have some high IQ genius in the story, and then when it comes to actually showing off their smarts, it's like a Reddit conversation.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah,
smart person on Reddit speaking,
yeah,
and it really goes to show you that the writers don't aren't smart enough people to
yeah,
write a smart character.
yeah, yeah,
Jim Carrey comes across as kind of a smart guy. Like he seems like a real wild person.
yeah. um Trying to think what else. There's What else is there to say? Courtney Cox is in this film. Um, she's, standard female uh, counterpart to Jim Carrey. Um, and yeah, she's fine in it. She's very attractive, very pretty. Um, what I do like about this movie is, so at the beginning she's like, skeptical of Jim Carrey's abilities, and then as the movie goes on, she trusts him more and more. And one thing I liked about this movie is there's no, because like in 99% of movies like this, about 2/3 of the way through the movie, at the end of Act Two, you'd have a scene where, for some reason, the female lead will lose confidence in the main character, and then there's this sort of dramatic turn, and then it's whatever. But this movie doesn't have that, which I really liked. It just sort of like ups the stakes even more.
Yeah.
Because I hate that in so many movies where things are going along fine, and then there's some arbitrary scene where people are like, I hate you, and then the last half of the ending of the movie is them like reconciling or whatever, and we don't have to waste time with that in this movie, which I really like. In a comedy movie, I really appreciate that they don't bother with
I think it portrays the roles a lot better anyway. Like a lot of the times, like this sort of falling out, the way in which it's presented in a romance movie where the woman is like, I hate you, and walks away, the way that the man is behaving in those scenes would usually actually like make the woman like them more. And it's especially the case in this movie where he has this giant are we able to swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
He has this giant shit-eating grin on his face as he insults her and calls her fat and all this.
Yeah,
and it actually makes her like him more pretty much immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
Which is, if you've ever been around like actual chads, or flirted with women, that's exactly how things go.
Yeah.
Like I remember growing up and thinking, wow, why does that work that way? But the movie doesn't have it. The movie comes across like it's written by someone that's actually successfully dated before, and not by someone that's just copying someone that never had a relationship in their life.
Yeah.
It reminds a lot of movies. It reminds me of that manga artist that said, or the VN artist that said, "I'm sorry for not portraying relationships well. I've never been in one. You wouldn't know how to talk about it."
Yeah, I don't know what else there is really to say about the movie. It's just sort of, I guess, like, other than the ending, and then we get a twist basically at the end. Most people would know this, I assume, but it's I don't know. Should we spoil it or should we not spoil it? What do you think? I mean, it's not really.
Honestly, it's an old movie, and it's by Jim Carrey. If you haven't watched it by now, you're not going to watch it anyway, probably.
And it's not like it's the greatest twist of all time or anything. So whatever.
Yeah.
Pretty much, it turns out one of the cops used to play for the Miami Dolphins, and is the one that kidnapped Snowflake in order to sort of mess with the team because they're all superstitious. And I thought that was funny, like him saying, all the players are superstitious. One guy's like never changed his underwear or something, like once they win a game.
Yeah, I think it was like his hand warming sleeves. He's never changed them because he thinks flies are lucky.
Yeah. And then she also kidnaps their quarterback, or whatever position it was that guy was.
Dan Marino.
Yeah, so he's an actual football player, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like it sounds very familiar. It sounds like a game. It sounds like a name in a Madden game that I've played before. But he, I know he's quarterback because the kicker, the football player blames him for not making the field goal because he held the football threads in rather than threads out.
Yeah. And I love when Jim Carrey goes to that guy's house and he like goes and sees his room, and it's just like you're very typical like schizo crazy guy, writing like newspaper on the walls and like blood and like eyes cut out and things like that, and
Yeah,
it's very
watching that, I was like, he's literally me.
and what does he say? It's like cozy, something like that. It's just very uh, it's sardonic, and I like when he's being sarcastic. I find that quite funny. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so that's another good bit, and basically it turns out that it is one of the cops, but it's one of the female cops, and they had plastic surgery, gender reassignment surgery to be a woman, and that's the twist at the end. And so there's sort of a funny scene at the end where he's fighting this gender reassigned woman, and then the joke is sort of like, you can't hit a woman, but it's not actually a woman, sort of thing. And I
yeah,
thought their fight scene was quite funny, and like he's just smashing her face into the pole, and it's like pretty like
yeah.
I thought it was pretty funny.
It's the only scene where you can legally beat women in a movie.
Well, not, I mean, in the 90s at least.
Yeah, and then like the whole scene where he's trying to prove that she's a man, and then the wig doesn't
uh
come off, and it's her real hair, and then the fake boobs. The whole scene reminds me of when Bruce Jenner was coming out as Caitlyn. Hello, my name is Caitlyn. I'm a very pretty woman, and he had not gotten the bottom surgery. So we had discussions around the table growing up. I don't know. I was like something like 12 or 13 years old. I was a young kid at the time, and we're talking about just how does that work? Like, how does he keep that from showing in dresses and everything? And of course, like, I have internet access back then, so I look it up and I'm like, oh, according to 4chan, everything gets taped back.
And that's what we find in this film as well,
Yeah, it
which is
gets
quite funny.
shoved in your face.
But you know,
It's just like that time when what's her name, the Prime Minister of New Zealand? Who is she?
oh, Jessica Ardern.
Yeah, it was just like when she went in the office, and she's walking down the hallway, and her schlong is literally swinging back and forth underneath her dress. Have you seen
Well,
that video?
no, no, no.
It's real. I'll show it to you after the show.
Well, I'm sure she's a lovely lady, Jessica Ardern. We're not here to talk politics.
Okay.
But it reminded me a bit of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that Tarantino movie, because at the end, like, Brad Pitt is like beating up the like Charles Manson, uh, Charles Manson chicks or whatever. So anyway, spoilers for that movie. But anyways, what else? That's pretty much all we have to say. I guess that's all I had to say about the movie. I don't know if you've got any other notes.
No, I don't have any other notes on it.
Um, I'll say. I mean, I guess I would. I'd recommend it if you like Jim Carrey movies. This probably isn't my favorite Jim Carrey movie. I'd recommend Dumb and Dumber over this. The original Dumb and Dumber. And if you like that movie enough, then maybe watch this. But it's a very '90s comedy. So if you're younger than me, you it might not translate, but it's well made, and I think we have to praise the fact that it's a well constructed and put together comedy movie. It's just a matter of taste, really, at that point,
Yeah.
whether or not you
I,
find it funny.
I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It's definitely worth watching,
Yeah,
especially if you're a movie guy.
yeah, yeah. I think six is a fair rating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it'll vary depending on where your tastes lie.
yeah, yeah. Um, that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
So I've got some. If we're gonna get into Ace Attorney next, I've got notes assembled here on it, and then I've watched the movie twice.
Wow.
So I definitely won't have everything put together, but I have a little bit to say about it.
Yeah, Ace Attorney. So uh, the reason I was like interested in watching this, aside from the fact that Ace Attorney Ace Ventura is like it sounds like a funny double feature, is the Ace Attorney movie is actually directed by Takashi Miike, who has directed. I mean, he directs all kinds of movies, but he typically directs extremely gruesome, disturbing movies. And in general, he's a really good director. We actually covered another of his movies a few episodes ago with Jeb called Gozu. And this is, I'll say, their only similarity is that they're both well made.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of that behind the scenes too. The behind the scenes are not, you can't get them in English, but I've read an article from someone that saw it in Japanese and translated it, and or didn't translate it but summed it up. And he said that when he got the movie, he 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 brought on actors that he said he was confident were not going to look like they were just in cosplay, but sort of like make the characters their own. And he was going to make it into an actual
Okay.
movie. Which isn't to say that it's not a video game movie at the same time. It definitely is,
Yeah.
but he's not afraid to switch back and forth, and that really keeps it from falling off the rails. Because with a lot of these movies, they're just trying to cram in video game references, and everything sort of works in naturally here, and there's a real plot to it, even if it's pretty nonsensical, like things like the classroom scenes. It's like I became a lawyer because you stood up for me when I lost my lunch money.
Yeah, I'll say my expectations were sort of quite low, and I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie. It was just it was very well made. Um, Full disclosure, I've never actually played Ace Attorney. I don't know if you have.
I watched a Let's Play years ago.
Okay, okay. But I had a quick, brief look at the actual plot of the game, and it follows like the similar sort of thing as from what I can tell, like similar plot.
Yeah,
Um, and it's just a really well made movie. The costumes are great, the hair is great, so they just try and keep it as close to the game as they can. Maybe like there's a little bit of compromise um, here or there, but in general, it looks good and it looks like the game. It's relatively faithful from what I can tell, at least. So I quite liked it. Um,
and in general, like the crowd scenes where you're seeing the people in the crowd, they have weird hair too. Like
yeah,
they really do their best to make it where the characters all blend in. It just looks like people have really weird
yeah,
style choices in this universe.
yeah. It's sort of like in anime in general. Like most people have weird hair, but it makes sense because everyone has weird hair, and they
Yeah,
managed to do the same thing in this.
and it comes across as very futuristic too. Like, it's definitely not set in Japan or set in the United States or set in any one
Yeah,
time period. It every design choice that could come across as anime fits perfectly in the setting
hmm,
that they made for it.
yeah,
And they don't just stick to they don't just stick to elements from the game either. Like the in order for them to show evidence to everyone in the courtroom
mm,
and dramatize it and make it seem a little bit more like the game, they'll put everything up on a hologram and do stuff like if they're going to throw evidence in the defendant's face or throw evidence in the prosecutor's face, they literally throw the
yeah,
evidence in his face by throwing the hologram at him.
yeah,
And every idiom you could think of when it comes to a courtroom is actually acted out like it's literal here,
yeah,
and that was pretty funny.
yeah. I just want to say I really liked the use of CGI in this film. Like it really meshed well. Like it's not the best or most beautiful CGI ever, but the way it's integrated because of the cinematography and the acting and stuff, it it feels relatively real, and because most of the time when you have this amount of CGI in a movie, it can look really bad, and it looks a bit cheesy here, of course, but it works. It works in the movie's favor for sure.
And the way in which they shoot every scene really blends it all together. The things one cinematic shot that really stood out to me was the visitation cell where Phoenix Wright is visiting his client to get the story on what happened that night,
Yeah,
and the story is being told. It starts out with the scene being literally in the window of the visitation cell taking place in the window before
Yeah.
fully fading into the scene.
Yeah.
And stuff like that was well beyond what I expected for a movie like this.
Yeah. The direction is really. It's not. I wouldn't call it super flashy necessarily, but it's just whenever there's a little opportunity to do something interesting visually, it is taken.
Yeah.
Um,
And it keeps your eyes glued to the screen too. Like
yeah.
you're afraid if you look away, you're going to miss something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which gets to the other part, which is that the movie doesn't really do very much telling. It does almost it shows everything, even when the characters are talking about something that happened and showing things as they happen in the flashback.
Yeah. Um,
I've got a bit of the plot written down. So I'm not going to tell very much of it, just because I actually not many people have had a chance to watch this movie,
yeah. I
and
think
I'd like for that.
I was thinking, yeah, this would be. I wouldn't want to go through all the details because number one, it's like too convoluted to explain.
Yeah,
But yeah, number two, I think if you haven't seen it and you don't necessarily want to play the visual novel, you know, for or whatever, or maybe you have played it, you know, then you already know the plot anyways. But yeah, I really recommend this movie.
yeah. So the movie starts with Phoenix like in at the bottom, as far as you can
Mm,
go, at the bottom of the courtroom, where he's barely able to stand up for his clients. He needs his mentor to come in and clear their names for him in court cases where it really shouldn't be hard. And the he's literally battling some dude that's wearing who's bald and wearing a kippah across from him. The meanwhile, Miles Edgeworth is a based Sigma male with an undefeated streak of convictions. There's a little bit of a dystopian aspect of the film. All the court system has introduced the bench trial system, where trials last no more than 3 days. They're supposed to be a
yeah,
very speedy. The everyone views the court system in terms of wins and losses, right? The
yeah,
prosecutors want to put people in prison as sort of like a win. If you fail to lock someone up, then that means you've lost somehow.
yeah,
It's the same way with the lawyers on defense.
yeah,
It's not a game of justice at all. The all the villains in the story are actually presented to us within 30 minutes of the movie start. Even though they're not necessarily presented as villains, they
yeah,
might have a little bit of a villainous aspect to them. And all the main points of the plot are also put forward within the first 30 minutes of the movie. And
yeah,
it's a 2.5 hour movie too, so that's very early on. And everything, I think it enhances the story if you know that everything is going to revolve around the D6 case.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that it all tied together because I thought it would be more. I mean, it is very episodic in a sense that there's like a case, and then that sort of develops the overall plot. And then there's about I don't know how many cases are. There's maybe like three cases or something, 3 or 4 cases. I can't
So
quite
there's
remember.
4 cases. You got the two at the start with Miles Edgeworth's
Yeah,
battle and Phoenix Wright's, and then you have the second one, which you know what that's over with
yeah,
Maya's case, and then you have the fourth one, which I won't spoil because that's about an hour into the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
And
Um,
really, what's awesome about it too is that pretty much none of the storylines feel untethered.
yeah,
The only time that a storyline feels untethered is a Steel Samurai story, because I was expecting the leak in that part
mm,
of the story to connect to the D6 case, to connect to
yeah, yeah.
attempted murder.
I thought
But
it was.
that's okay. That's
Yeah, I thought it was cute how that did tie back in to what was happening. Like to it tied back in, but not directly. It sort of like it explained, you know, the setup in terms of what was happening on the lake at the time, basically,
yeah.
which I liked. You know, that there was some reason for that. It wasn't just sort of this arbitrary thing. Um,
And in a way that was better than what I had in mind. Really, the only nonsensical parts of the story I can think of is the part where he goes into the water and he just pulls up squids to a disappointed crowd,
yeah,
and there's just a French flag sitting there. It's like
yeah. What is
it's
going
there
on?
for no reason.
Um, I guess we can talk about the characters a bit. So obviously Ace, there's Ace. What's his actual name?
Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix Wright, of course, of course. How could I forget? Um, and I really liked him. He's sort of your lovable underdog guy, and like over the course of the movie, he gains his confidence, and he becomes more competent at being a lawyer. Um, and I like the background that him, Edgeworth, and what's the other guy's name? Butts.
Edgeworth, Vaughn, yeah, Butts, and then the prosecutor's name is Vaughn Karma.
Yes, I love the names. The names are so good. Um,
And here's the thing about the names, though. If you're paying attention to the Japanese dub, none of those names line up. The
no, they changed all the names. Yeah.
Yeah, which really goes to show with the original game just how much the localization team added to it.
Mm. Um, but I do like the names. I actually don't know what the original ones are, but yeah, Phoenix. I like his hair, like the slicked back hair. This sort of very stylized slicked back hair, and he's
Yeah,
just got the classic sort of blue suit on. Um, and I like that he's not necessarily naive so much as like he's just a bit green, and as the movie goes along, he like gets his confidence, um, and he sort of works out what's going on, and then like everyone likes him and he becomes like popular at the end, and I really liked his sort of just his arc in general in the film.
yeah,
um, Butts I liked
and
as a comic relief character. I think they used him very well. Like he was never used to the point of being annoying for me, at least. Maybe, I don't know, some
mhm.
people might find him annoying, but I thought that he yeah was well utilized as your comic relief goofy character. I liked him. um,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, sorry, you were going to say something about Phoenix.
I think he really fit his video game counterpart well too. The like that sort of goofiness, and at the same time just the way he looks with the spiky hair and then also a very round face at the same time matches the character
Mm,
in the game. The weird thing about it is that none of these people come across like they're in cosplay either, except
mm,
for Maya, specifically
yeah,
because of her necklace, which is plastic,
yeah,
and that got on my nerves. But everything else looks like they're actually just it's a part of their movie getup, like something you would see in this movie if it was an original movie.
yeah. um, yeah, the costumes are great. Like Edgeworth and Von Karma, they're sort of aristocratic. Is that like 18th century sort of? I don't know what it is. It's sort of. I mean, it's a stylized version of sort of a European aristocratic sort of suit, I suppose.
I really hate to use the word because all the people that are into this genre I hate, but it's almost steampunk.
It's almost steampunk. It's very like Castlevania. This sort of. Uh, it's very. It reminded me a lot of just sort of the when when Asians or Japanese in particular do something set in Europe and set in the past in Europe, and it's sort of this has this sort of much more of a mishmash type feel of things. But obviously, also this
Yeah,
movie is uh, futuristic, so it does feel yeah, it's like this interesting sort of mixture of steampunk and almost sort of like cyberpunk, super like dystopic elements, and the world is sort of dystopic, probably, I guess. But I mean, it seems pretty pleasant from what we see. It's just they have this bizarre court system.
yeah, and there is a little bit of disjointedness between the outside world and the interior world in the movie, where the interiors all have this Victorian kind of get up inside this technological advancement that we see in the courtrooms. But then as soon as you step outside, it looks like just a regular day in the countryside. Like there's nothing really odd going on there, aside from the way people are dressed.
Yeah. I guess that just is budgetary. They couldn't make everything look. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's how it is in the game as well. But I mean,
Yeah,
to be fair, I mean, most courts, at least in Europe and stuff, the courts look very fancy and whatnot, and then when you go outside, it just looks normal. So it's
True.
not completely out of place. Depending on how old a court is, if it's a more prestigious one or whatever.
True. And they may have just not wanted to shoehorn in technology that didn't need to be
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And one thing I loved as well is when they showed flashbacks to sort of the court, decades prior. The technology was different for how they showed the evidence and stuff like that. I really loved that. That was like a really nice detail.
What's really interesting is the fact that like spiritual stuff in this universe is not out of place at all. Like you have a
Mm,
literal medium being used to decide a court case in the beginning of the movie,
yeah,
and then later on you just have this possessed puppet that is on the police force, and
yeah,
it's treated normally,
yeah. Um,
which I think that's a reference to the video games, that puppet, but at the
yeah,
at the same time, the way in which it's presented, where it's just totally nonchalant
yeah.
and it's not presented as like, hey guys, look at this reference, gives the world that this takes place in a more alien feel.
Yeah, the movie doesn't. Again, I haven't played the games or anything, but a lot of the time when you watch, so for instance, on the previous episode, I talked about Twilight, and that movie, you can tell when it's just something is shoehorned in because it was like something that was in the books. Whereas it doesn't really feel like there's too much fan servicey stuff in this. Like there's not a
Yeah,
moment where it's like, oh, that's why he's called Phoenix, right, sort of thing, or it doesn't have that.
yeah.
Because I can just imagine if um, like a Western Hollywood director and writing team had made this movie. I mean, it would have been horrendous.
And I think it was Jeb that pointed this out, but Phoenix Wright, the video games don't feel like they take place in Japan,
mm,
and I think he said it was. I'm sorry, Jeb, if this isn't you. I think he said his headcanon was that like it takes place in a universe where Japan actually took over the eastern seaboard of the U.S. And that's definitely what the movie feels like as well, because none of the movie feels like it's in Japan, aside
no,
from
no,
aside from Butts. Butts is like
yeah,
a racist parody of a Japanese person,
he is
which
basically,
it's very funny by itself because Japanese people like to make racist parodies of themselves. I've noticed.
yeah, he's your stereotypical like Japanese yokel type character.
Yeah, it reminds me of here where I live. We have something called a flea market, which is just
Yeah,
people have tables and they sell stuff on them. We had a guy literally called himself the Chinese box guy, just selling knickknacks. And whenever he moved locations in the flea market, he would have signs posted throughout the flea market saying "Chinese box guy this way." I think he introduced himself to everyone as Bob, but he could barely speak English. I, I should probably like go and buy something from him sometime. But like
yeah,
every time I got something from him as a kid, it broke. Just like butts in this movie.
yeah. That's a funny like thing that's in the background as well. He's selling like crappy plastic toys as like he just wants to go fishing and like chill, and you know he's a
And then
cool anarchy.
his knickknacks like take center stage at the very beginning movie
Yeah,
and at the very end.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. The that uh statue, the thinking statue as well. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting, and I just love the court scenes in general as well, where it reminded me a lot of. See, I'm not too big a weeb, so I don't have too many references to draw on, but it reminded me a lot of Death Note in that you'd have scenes where like it's just the character explaining things for 2 minutes, but it's so cool because it's like they're being smart and like working it out. And the court scenes reminded me a lot of that, where there'd be how do they say objection again? Was it shirogi or something?
uh, something like that.
Yeah, so they'd have an objection, and then they'd be like explaining for the next 5 minutes. Oh, but didn't you say that X, Y, and Z, and blah 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 blah? And then I always liked how they did that. Um,
Yeah, I didn't work out if it's because the evidence that they give to the audience is limited or not, but I never knew where they were going to go with the court case for the movie.
Yeah.
Every time there's a new turn in the court, it comes out of the blue for me. Maybe that's just maybe if I watched it a third time, I would see the evidence. I don't want to do that.
I think, yeah, it gets almost, I would say, a pretty perfect balance in terms of, because in a mystery, you can't make it obvious from the beginning, but then you also can't make it feel like it comes out of nowhere and it's not a satisfying end. And it's sort of, you get that really good balance, because you have early dialogue scenes between, for instance, not to spoil anything, but you have like an early dialogue scene between Von Karma and Edgeworth, and considering what happens later on in the film, there's sort of certain implications or understanding of the characters that you can get from what they're saying to each other.
And Edgeworth definitely grows over the course of the movie.
Yeah, I love him so much. He's like the coolest guy ever. I really like his character.
Yeah.
I also like the Western guy, the creepy, what was his name again? Red White or White Red?
Yeah, Red White.
Yeah.
That I was like, I've thought oftentimes for these Japanese movies like it could benefit from having white actors, and then they finally bring in a white actor, and he looked very British. I'll say that.
Okay, so he's mixed. Okay, yeah, he's mixed. I'm just looking up the actor right now because I wanted to double check, is he actually European? But he's mixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
He played his role very well.
Oh, he is great. I really liked him as this sort of very creepy guy. and that's the thing, like some of the characters, his character could come across, I mean, his character is over the top, but it could be over the top in like a obnoxious way. But I think because the tone of the movie, it doesn't really take itself too seriously necessarily. Like it doesn't pretend that it's this super deep courtroom drama. It's just sort of like I wouldn't call it super light-hearted mystery, but it's sort of like I don't know exactly what the tone is. It's a tone I've not really experienced. Yeah, I guess that's the thing. It is like a visual novel tone. Like it captures that tone quite well.
I love the scene where like they're questioning him, and in order to show that he can't talk or his lips are sealed, he literally has duct tape mask over his mouth
Yeah.
and then a zipper on it. It's just and the guy questioning him starts screaming at him after that. It's really funny. Or they reference him and it shows him in a scene where he's like in the dark and he's just subtly dancing.
Yeah.
And this doesn't come across as a video game character at all. It comes across as a really insane character. He's almost like the Joker in how well his actor pulls off the role.
Yeah, and he's so theatrical when he gets brought to the court. I really like it. He's like, he works because his character is this sort of sleazy, like tabloid journalist guy, and so yeah, he's a really good character as well. And I was also gonna say I really like, is it Yana Yogi? Oh well, anyway, we'll there's a character that's introduced about halfway through the film, and then we find out his backstory, and it is so tragic. I was so sad for him. It was so sad. And I think, that's one thing I love about Asian stuff in general is, I don't know, they're just so much better at mixing tones and, I don't know how they do it, but they are able to do things that are comedic, lighthearted, but also when they have serious moments, I think it just comes across as sincere. That's the thing.
Yeah. They maintain a good tone throughout the movie while mixing in all this funny stuff, and it never breaks the tone. It never goes so far out as to take you out of the story, and it really contrasts well with movies that people like over here. Like, I don't watch very many movies, to be honest with you, so maybe I'm being biased, but like most of the time I watch a movie, it's my family dragging me off to watch a Marvel movie.
Well,
Which now I've just started like turning them down. Like I haven't watched a Marvel movie in a while, but the
yeah,
quipping and the way people act when you're supposed to laugh at a scene completely breaks any moment they're trying to set up there. And
yeah,
I never feel like that with this movie.
no, yeah, yeah,
That scene where the puppet prevents a wrong verdict from being given at the end of the movie.
yeah.
That is something that I didn't think you could set up a scene like that and have something that funny and that serious at the same time work together.
Yeah, it really worked. I don't know. I think like I haven't watched that many like since I don't know enough about Ace Attorney and like visual novels and things like that to um, fully comment on it. But it's just yeah, there's something. It's just very sincere movie. I like that it's not meta and it's not constantly noisy as well. Like it's not always. It's not like every 5 seconds there's a pop song or every 5 seconds there's. It's just like a good movie. It's just a good solid movie, and the fact that it's like 2 hours and a quarter or something, it goes by so quick. It's so weird because normally I hate movies that are long, um, without any warrant for them to be long. But
Yeah,
this, it deserves it. It deserves the 2 hours and a bit that it uses, and it's not like I don't know. It just I just sat there and watched it, and I couldn't stop watching it. It's just like a super entertain. It's almost feels like a mini series is how I describe it. Like it feels like
yeah.
you're watching 3 episodes of this really good mini series that sucks you in, and
Mm.
yeah, I really liked it.
And I think that nothing really sums up the feel of the movie better than every time a court decision is made, and if it's decided that the person is not guilty, they get confetti thrown in
Yeah,
the air and holographic confetti thrown, and
yeah,
they get a big "not guilty" written out in kanji in the hologram, celebrating the fact, oh, you're not guilty on the screen, and
yeah,
that's like that. There's something like really dark about that and
yeah,
really funny at the same time,
yeah.
and lighthearted that makes it you could just sum up the movie in that one scene.
Mm.
Just one of
Um,
those scenes.
I'm just trying to think what else have I got written here.
We actually hit
Uh,
on most of the stuff that I had written down.
yeah, I just want to say I like Von Karma's character is good too. He's I won't say too much, but I like what happens with his story. And the judge as well, just completely stone faced basically the entire time, is great.
Yeah,
Um, and the beard as well on him is amazing. And I know that
it is.
that comes straight from the game as well, obviously. Um,
Yeah,
I think this is probably the best video game adaptation movie if you count visual novels as video games, I guess, or if I mean, they're sort of in this middle ground in my books at least. But
yeah,
I think it goes to show that if you there is a way to adapt media, well, video games, where I don't know, you don't have to make it this ridiculous farce or like you don't have to make it the Sonic movie. Like you can just sort of go more straight with what the game is, and you just sort of take it semi seriously. I don't know. It was a very interesting movie to watch, just in terms of
it's a video game movie with a competent director
yeah,
and writers.
yeah, yeah. I think it's really it's I'm impressed. Takashi Miike. If you want to show your kids a Takashi Miike film, this is the one, I guess. I don't know what age would you show this to a kid? Like 12?
Like 12, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit younger. Like the thing is, I don't. There are parts of the movie that are actually censored on YouTube for me. So the very beginning
Uh,
of Butts' witness testimony is completely cut out for me.
what?
And yeah, and then Von Karma's rant at the end of the movie, he like well over half of it is cut out. It's crazy. So all I get is this several scenes loosely taped together where he's saying "kuso." I think that's the word he's saying
Oh,
for
yeah, he
shit.
is swearing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
which is sad. I don't understand why YouTube censors that when I paid for the movie and I didn't ask for it to be censored.
That's pretty dodgy. Yeah, I mean, swearing is very different in Japanese. Anyway, but we're not here for a linguistics lesson. Um,
Yeah.
oh, one thing I loved is, yeah, during Von Karma's sort of rant scene was the editing. It was doing all these sort of jump cuts between him like yelling and like, you know, pushing back his hair and fiddling with his hair, and it kept. I don't know if you remembered that the editing there was really good.
Okay, so that's what I was talking about being censoring. Like that's what I thought. That did not come across as an artistic decision to me.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
that.
that makes sense now. Okay.
Because it was just, I mean, it was portraying his like complete breakdown.
Yeah, and I love how he's like we're getting deep into spoiler territory now,
Yeah.
but I love how he's like messing with his hair in the lead up to his rant, and his hair is neatly swept back for most of the movie, and he's making it messy to show that he's coming unraveled,
Yeah, yeah.
which is
Um,
which is another thing. Just goes back to what we've been saying, which is that this movie is not afraid to just show symbolism.
yeah,
Shove symbolism in your face and take it seriously and not seriously, and have it come across really well.
yeah. Um, yeah, that was the one thing I wanted to say. Another thing. Yeah, I liked that it built the world around like the story. It was subtly, but it wasn't about that. And there's things in there about to a certain degree, just because I guess that's the nature of it. It's sort of a commentary on like I wouldn't say it's a commentary on litigiousness or anything like that. It's more like the setting is this sort of joke version of modern litigiousness,
Yeah,
and it doesn't really
and
harp on about it. It's not political or anything like that. That's just what the setting is.
there's nothing unnecessary in this story. Like the number of unnecessary things is the squid scene, maybe, if you
Yeah,
don't find it funny. Which I'm
yeah,
guessing Japanese people, there's probably a reference to something over there. That
yeah,
probably
yeah,
was funny.
yeah,
And then them just pulling up gourds and like, well, it's Gourd Lake,
yeah,
which goes to show you how seriously that world takes its own
yeah.
logic.
um Now, is there anything else we want to say? I don't know.
I don't know. I think that's it.
Because I don't want to get into the story really with it. I think you should watch it if
Yeah,
you're listening.
please watch it.
Yeah,
And I know it's hard to get. Like it's not really in the band. It's hard to get it off a pirate. It's hard to pirate it. But it's if you have to pay a few dollars for it, I think it's worth it.
yeah. It's because it's an actually good movie. It's not it's not like some profound art house thing, but it's a really extremely solid two and a bit hours of entertainment.
I give it about a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's the hard thing with ratings. It's like I enjoyed this so much more than Ace Ventura. So I don't know. I feel like I need to give it. Maybe I need to lower Ace Ventura to a 5, and then
Yeah,
this gets a 7. I don't know. I don't normally do
it, it,
ratings, but anyways.
it might depend on who you are as well, because I grew up watching kung fu movies with my dad, so I got
Yeah.
used to reading subs. And
Yeah.
I like anime too, so I got used to reading subs in that. And a lot of people might be put off by that. They might be put off by just having Japanese actors on the screen, which
Yeah.
can cross weird for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We really are used to in our movies over here when Asians are on screen, they're very Europeanized.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, no, well, it's not very Europeanized, but anyway, it's good.
Yeah, they're very much their own nationality in this movie.
Yeah. Um, I think that's all there is to say.
Yep.
Really. Let's have a quick
All
look
right.
in the chat here. So we've got Landviot saying he's watching the show with his friend Nick. Very nice.
Nice.
Um, and he's making some other jokes. One is Twilight 2, probably never. And Red Wave Painters, hanging out with my girl Ivana, loving the show. And then he's saying, thanks for the recommendation. He's saying, if you're looking for something obscure, Zookle usually has it. Yes, I've heard Zookle can be good. But I don't know. It's not a tech review show, so I won't comment. I don't know, is there anything else you want to add?
I was about to say, like, if this went well, would you ever like to do two kung fu movies?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that would be good. I don't know. We'd have to think of something good. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd have to ask my dad because he's a kung fu movie aficionado.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll think of some. I mean, yeah, I'd be 100% keen to do that at some point.
All right.
All right. Well, go everyone, go follow at anarchopalamism. Make sure you sub to this channel. I'm assuming most people listening to this are. I don't know. I haven't checked my analytics.
This is definitely the best Orthobro YouTube channel.
I mean, it's the best one that isn't explicitly just theology.
Yeah.
Because it's the
Just
only one. What else is there to say? Nothing. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for tuning in. The 3 concurrent viewers, greatly appreciated. I hope I haven't missed anyone saying anything in the chat. Zoomer has also said, "Enter the Dragon" is Kino. True, very true. Some good old Bruce Lee. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on Gigabillionaire Grindset.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Good night and good luck, everyone.
Good night.
All right, stream's done.